Okay, sweet.
So what does everybody want to do? We're all good with all that. Anybody has any other requests? Okay, let's get started. So lots of room behind us. Knees together, feet together, hands behind those thighs, making a nice C, and then just coming down one vertebra at a time, nice and slow, until the back of the skull arrives. We're going to bring one leg up, bring the other leg up. Look at the backs of the knees, and let's slide the thumbs into the backs of the knees. If you can bring your thighs together and you're not 31 weeks pregnant, then you want to keep those knees and thighs together. And you want to lift the elbows, and you want to push the knees onto the thumbs, and you're going to lift the thumbs up onto the knees. Fire up your feet as if your feet were doing 90-degree angle ankles, right? So that the heels are pushing into an imaginary block. With the crease, and then the actual heel is trying to kind of energetically lift off that block. And just start with a little bit of belly breath here. With each inhale, feel the belly expanding, and with each exhale, feel the belly gently contracting, and then just start to pulse a little bit. And if this is causing your chin to lift and the back of the neck to get wrinkly, then you want to add a little bit of a strap or have your hands on your knees to make your arms a little bit longer so that moving your legs doesn't affect your neck. Again, really finding that idea of the knees draping over the back of the knee and the back of the knee lifting up into the kneecap. And then let's go a little bit side to side. Think about pulling the elbows and the armpits apart as you do this. Keep on breathing. And then let the side to side turn into circles. And then changing direction with your circles. And then a little bit of side to side again. And then finishing up with a little bit of pulsing. And then letting your feet come down one at a time. Let's have our knees and our feet at hips distance apart. We're going to bring our arms beside us. Let's have our arms halfway to a T. Let's push into our fingers and our palms. We're going to lift up our pelvis, but we're going to keep the back rib cage on the floor. So we call this a baby bridge. We want to think floating ribs to one another, and we want to think about the back rib cage behind the floating ribs, full of concrete, and keep that part of your back ribs on the floor. And then we're just going to imprint and arch our pelvis. So it's that same motion of imprinting and arching that you do when we're on the floor, but this time we're doing it floating. So if you want to put it on the floor just to find that action where you imprint, pubic bone lifts, so you take the pubic bone away from you, get that little bit of a back bend too, but then lift it up just a little bit and see if you can get it in the air, moving back and forth. And as we do that, we want to keep the back rib cage rooting down.
We did a whole workshop today on child's pose, neutral pelvis, and 3-part breath.
Yeah, those 3 for this week. Again, just trying to keep that manta ray rib back rooted. And then bring your pelvis down onto the floor, really, really light, as if your pelvis is made of a china teacup and it's got a little crack, and you want to slowly, slowly place it down onto the floor. So lightly. Beautiful. And then let's practice sit your butt into a chair. So on the back, with the back on the floor, you're going to sit into your right butt, you're going to sit into your left butt. You're going to try and keep that lumbar curve as if there was a grate on that lowest part of your back, and you don't want to crush that grate. Just move one butt away from you, other butt away from you. And just feel how those ribs bulge and shorten from side to side. And so that nice gentle combo of the wind remover and then just kind of playing with the pelvis is one of the quickest, easiest ways to get rid of back pain.
Are we floating still?
Are we which, sorry?
Floating?
Not yet, but now we're gonna float. Then we're gonna come up, we're gonna lift the pelvis just a little bit, baby bridge, and we're gonna try and do that in the air. So now you feel how your hips are going like this. I want it to go like this. So go back down. So that's femur heads. So now move your butt to me. That one you're really good at. So sit your butt into that chair. Push into my block. Now without the hips going this way, and this is great stuff for you to learn because you're back. Just sit this butt. Good. Just into that butt. Nice. And then just sit into this butt. There you go. And then just sit into that butt. And then just. So it's this. So what this is doing is hip to the armpit, hip to the armpit.
Okay. Okay.
Right? As opposed to femurs. One is forward and back to the floor away from the floor, and one is to the armpit away from the armpit.
Okay.
So it's 3 movements, and one is always harder than the others. So teeter totter is super easy for you, right? Teeter totter this way.
Okay. Shortening the sides of the waist.
Yeah, so it goes like this,
Okay.
right? So this is me shortening on one side. See how one hip is higher than the other?
That's just like my scoliosis back all the time, I feel like.
That's exactly it, right? That's why the awareness may not be there. Float it for a little bit longer and sit your butt to a chair, but it's good to know which one's hard so you can work it. And you're still combining the two, but that's okay. At least you're figuring out that movement, right? Which is hard to do zooming. So now we know what we work on today. So just sit your butt into a chair, sit your butt into a chair, sit your butt into a chair, and then bring it down, and let's do the femurs. So we're gonna pull one femur in, we're gonna pull the other femur in. I like to have my fingers on my hip bones, and this one's more like a teeter-totter to the floor. So the right side of the pelvis comes to the floor, right hip bone drops, left hip bone lifts when you pull in the femur, and then when you pull in the opposite femur, the right side lifts, the left side lowers. As we go back and forth, we also want to think of not just the femur pulling into the pelvis, but I like to visualize a little elf on my sacrum lifting the side that's lifting. Like an air mattress is blowing up on the side that the femur's not pulling into. So that we learn to twist the pelvis separately, and we learn to notice when it's twisted, because so many of us are born with a twisted pelvis, and so many of us adapt through habitual behavior to twist the pelvis continuously. And then float it like a baby, like a little baby bridge, and then see if you can pull the femurs in here without moving the hip bones to and from the armpit, and without losing the lumbar curve. That's a whole nother game, right? And remember, at the beginning, if it's hard for us to isolate these 3 movements, be patient. As long as you're able to move your pelvis, that's a step in the right direction. And if you kind of lose it, just bring your pelvis back down to the floor and find your there. If it gets too breezy, let me know. What I'm doing these days is I'm cranking the heat, but I can always turn it down, and I'm opening these windows on this side of the room. And that seems to be working really well. I'm going to turn the heat down a little bit. So if you find it too hot, don't be by here. Let someone who likes the heat be by here. Exactly. And no wind in the middle of that noise, right? And then I'll be over in a tank top. And then let that baby bridge come down, let the pelvis come onto the floor. Again, lowering that pelvis like a china teacup with a crack, bring the pelvis down. Let's take our blocks and put them between our thighs. So Tanya, you don't worry about the blocks. We're going to put one block between our feet. If you're my height, I'm 5'11", it would be, or shorter, it's this medium width between the feet. If you're taller than me, 6+, then you would have it the widest width between the feet, okay? And then we're going to take the other block, if we're not pregnant, nice and close towards the thighs, as close to the pubic bone as we can. Our arms, let's have them halfway to a T, just to give give ourselves a little bit more force. Let's push into all 10 fingers. Let's push into the circumference of the palms. Let's root the shoulder heads to the floor. And we're going to lift the low back, the mid back, and the upper back, coming into a little bridge. And then we're going to come down one disc, one vertebra at a time. Try and keep the lumbar curve and try and place the pelvis very, very lightly, like it's a cracked china teacup. And then we're going to lift up the pelvis, try and keep the lumbar curve. And we're going to peel the spine one disc, one vertebra at a time off the mat. Nice. And if this is easy, and you want to engage the hamstrings a little more to make it a little more challenging, take your legs to a 90-degree angle and lift up the soles of the feet and dig the heels in. You'll get less height this way, but the legs will work harder. If you want more height, instead of the leg strength, you can have your shins at a 90 and continue to come down one disc, one vertebra at a time, and continue to lift up one disc, one vertebra at a time. Just nice and slow, up and down. Really think about moving the flesh of the butt away from the low back and the middle of the butt up towards the sky. So keep no head under your head, right, for the back end.
No.
As long as it feels okay. It feels okay?
Yeah.
And just noticing where the spine might want to come down as a clump and really encouraging separate movement into that space. Let's take 5 more deep, full breaths here. Medium width, yeah. Near width between the thighs, medium width between the feet. And then once those 5 breaths are complete, we're going to come down one disc, one vertebra at a time, nice and slow, arriving with our pelvis nice and light on the floor. Nice. Then we're going to feel our pelvis. We're going to try and level out the pubic bone, hip bones. We're going to keep the pelvis level, pushing into the elbows. We're going to lift up the back rib cage and lengthen it away from the pelvis. We're going to lift up the skull, and we're going to lengthen the skull away from the shoulders. Let's bring the feet to touch, big toe, heel, edge of the foot to touch, soles of the feet on the floor. We're going to open up our knees just as wide as we can without the big toe, heel, edge of the foot lifting. We're going to place our hands onto our belly, our elbows onto the floor, and we're just going to start to breathe into our belly. With each inhale, we're going to feel the belly lifting, broadening, expanding, and with each exhale, we're going to feel the belly sinking and shrinking. Just really focusing on your body from the inside, focusing on your breath. So just a quick little announcement. In an attempt to kind of organize the missed classes, obviously it used to be a little bit more laid back and we didn't have such strict number capacity. And so I've looked at all my options, and I think the easiest, freest option is to set up, which I've done, a separate Instagram account for missed classes. And then I've set up basically like a little calendar on there, and it's quite descriptive as to how you would post your class, and it's quite descriptive as to how you would take a class from that. So in our next newsletter, there will be a link to that Instagram account. It's a private account because I don't want everyone coming to class. I want to keep us still, nice and tight, and obviously keep the classes available for people that are registered and to do makeups and what have you. So it would be helpful if you're comfortable using Instagram, which is a free, super simple to use app, to set up an account and then to basically friend me, I guess, on Instagram, and then we can post that way. If you need help with that, no worries, just let me know and I can help you next class. If that is way out of your comfort wheel, no big deal. You can still continue within 24 hours of the class, letting me know that you're going to miss that class. Or in class in advance, you can let me know and I can post it with you or show you how to post it. I don't know if that makes sense. All of that will be in the newsletter, and so if you read it, you'll get a really good idea of what I'm talking about. I just wanted to give you the heads up, so when you see it, you've got a little bit of an idea of what's going on and what we're thinking with that. Let's take 5 more big belly breaths here. And it also means people that are Zooming can randomly pick up a class and come to the studio occasionally, which will be a nice treat for them too. And then we're going to draw our knees together. We're going to roll off to the side. We're going to put blocks between our thighs and our ankles, so it doesn't matter which side you're on, but make sure you can see me. It's going to make it a lot easier. We're going to put one block at most narrow width between our knees and one block at medium width between our feet. We're going to come down onto our shoulder. If we had any neck or shoulder things, we'd have our bottom arm straight out in front of us. We'd put a block underneath our head, right? And that would be restful. Or we could have a nice pillow underneath our head, but you can see that we would maintain a neutral neck there. If we want to work the shoulder a little bit more, we can bend our elbow, put your hand on the back of your skull, and use your hand to pull the back of the skull, and then root the back of the skull into the hand. I like to not let my head drop, but float my head at a neutral position because there's no time like the present to strengthen your neck. Option C is to have a straight arm. Palm down is going to allow you to get deeper into the armpit. One day there's no room between the armpit and the floor. And I'm not just like heavy head on the floor, but I'm thinking about lifting up my right temple a little bit, and I'm lengthening my skull away from the back of the neck. So it's not heavy, but it's a little bit light on that arm. If I wanted to make it gentler, I could take my thighs back so that they're at 120 with my belly. If I wanted to make it harder, I could bring my thighs forward so they're at a 90 with my belly. Right? We're going to be here, and then we're just going to start. Let's start by imprinting and arching our low back. So we're going to imprint and we're going to arch. So again, looking at neutral pelvis and how it affects us in the side body, our low backs are going to love this. We just had a wild and crazy blue full moon, so it's nice to take it a little bit easier. So we're going to imprint and arch and just get that loosening that way. Nice. And then find neutral. Feel that lumbar curve. Feel the hip bones stacking on top of one another. Feel the pelvis level, like it had a wall behind it. Good. And then let's find the femur. So let's pull the right femur in, or top femur. Let's take the top femur in, let's take the top femur out. Let's take the top femur in, let's take the top femur out. Let's pull it all around. Just kidding. But we're just going to move the femur in and out of the pelvis. And you can even have your hand on your pelvis, and you can see how when you pull the top femur in, the pelvis slopes down towards the bottom, right? And then as you take it as far forward as you can, it's going to again create a slope. So that's not neutral, that's a twisted pelvis. And we can adjust the twist in our pelvis, which obviously affects our neck, by moving our femurs. And you can do this with a bolster between your knees and your ankles, which is lovely. If you're at home, it's a little more forgiving than the block. The blocks are good. And then find the knees and the hips stacked so that we've got that nice level pelvis. And then let's look at sit our butt into a chair. Take your top hand, grab your butt, and sit that butt into your hand, right? So reach around. Some of us might even be able to grab the sit bone or grab whatever you can grab, but then sit your butt down into that hand, and just notice how that introduces a waist on that bottom side. And then lift that butt away from the hand, and notice how you lose the waist on the bottom side. You could also take your hand into your hip flexor, and you can use your fingers to move your hip flexor away from your armpit, and you'll feel how you get a waist on the bottom side, right? Which means the two sides of the torso are even. And then let that butt come to you, and notice how you lose the waist. And then just see if you can find that. Sit your butt into a chair and feel how that changes the bottom side of the waist. So it's just a totally different angle of looking at the neutral pelvis. So good, third trimester, Tanya. And then sit your butt into a chair so that both butts are even. You've got a nice waist on both sides. Now, you're gonna think about your inner knees dropping the block. You're gonna think about your outer knees squeezing the block. You're gonna think about your inner feet dropping the block. You're gonna think about your outer feet squeezing the block. And you're gonna inhale to internally rotate your groins. You may even wanna grab your groin and just pull it sort of from the mid groin to the back groin. And then you're gonna exhale to bring it down. You're gonna inhale to bring it up, and you're gonna exhale to bring it down. And we're not squeezing the block with the knee. We're just thinking about the knees holding onto that block evenly, inner knee dropping, outer knee squeezing. And again, this is one of the nicest ways to release that low back. And again, that third trimester just gets super tight. And then let's lift that ankle to hold. It was Tanya's birthday a couple days ago, so she gets a Tanya class. Happy birthday, T. And just keep on breathing. As we lift that foot, think about that creeper pose we warmed up with and try and lengthen from the big toe heel. That foot is awesome for you, Robin. You feel that foot, it's so good. And that has come so far. Nice, and then just breathing there, get that lift. And then see if you can take your mind right into your tailbone and feel the space that that creates, right? That internal rotation creates space in the low back. Shouldn't pull into the knees at all. Just take 5 more breaths right into that low back. You can use your hand to make you sit yourself into a chair. You can see if your pelvis is level. You can feel if you're losing that waist. Nice. So internal rotation, Dwayne, we've got to work on that. That's so important as we get older. Don't force it. You're just getting tired. We'll work on it. And then bring it down. Nice. And then we're going to take that block away. We're going to lift up that leg. We're going to place the foot behind us. So here the pelvis is probably at a little bit of a slant, but I want you to think about moving your butt forward just a little bit. And then just think about that knee moving forward and back a little bit. So Dwayne, go easy on this one. You might want to take your foot a little further away from you. So more like a 90 as opposed to a 45 bend in the knee, and that'll be gentler on the groin. Right, and then as we move it forward, it's gentler on the groin, and as we lift it up, it's more intense. So we want to be super gentle on that one. Just learning how to move that, and seeing if you can move that femur without moving the pelvis. And in a dream world, if we weren't pregnant, we could keep that pelvis at a 90-degree angle with the floor, and then some of us could really open up that knee and get really deep into that groin by thinking flesh of the top butt away from low back and middle of the butt forward. So when I'm doing this, what I want to do is keep this pelvis level, keep my hip bone stacked. Again, this is more technical, and really think flesh of the top butt away from the low back, middle of the butt forward, so as I bring that knee back, I can really get deep into that hip. And just take it back, hold it back, pull both femurs into the hip sockets, take some nice deep breaths here. And then lift that leg up, bring it around, release it, take a couple breaths. And then let's come over to the other side. So whatever side you're laying on, you're going to lie on the other side, and we're going to do neutral pelvis on our side. So one block between our feet at medium width, one block between our knees at most narrow width, ankles stacked, knees stacked. So you get those joints stacked, you lie down, you mimic your shoulder, and you find a neutral neck. So it's really common to have like a big sticking out C7, and if that's happening, then you want to bring the back of the skull back. I like to really play the hand here, so I would take my hand and I'd really hold it onto the back of my skull if I'm doing this one, and I'd root my head back and I'd try and find a neutral neck, but I wouldn't necessarily just go, right? Because like I said, you may as well strengthen your elbow, your arm, and your shoulder here. If you need a break, take it. If you did a straight arm, do a straight arm. But again, you want to think about a little bit of helium on that left side of the temple and jaw so that you're not just kind of letting it fall like you're taking a nap, right? We take a nap when we take a nap, not during yoga. So our thighs, if we did a 120 degree on one side, we do that. If we did a 90 degree on one side, we do that on this side. Good. And then we started with imprinting and arching. So we're going to imprint our low back, and we do that by kind of pulling the pubic bone towards the navel, and then we take the pubic bone away from the navel, which causes us to go into more of a back bend. Right, so pubic bone away from navel, pubic bone to the navel. And when we do this, we want to try and keep the waist on both sides of the body, the lower side and the top side. And we want to try and keep the hips from moving. We just want to be moving that low lumbar curve and a little bit of the pelvis. And then find what feels like neutral to you, that you've got a little bit of a back bend. And then we're going to go to that top femur and we're going to pull it all the way into our hip socket. And we're going to notice that we twist in the direction of that top leg. And then we're going to tuck that top leg as far forward as we can. And this range will grow as your pelvis sort of starts to learn how to move. Very rarely do I meet someone that knows how to move their pelvis, but you know, it's very rare that after 6 months of yoga, the pelvis isn't different. So here we're moving the femur in and out, so we're twisting the pelvis forward and back, and we're noticing how that affects the ribs, the neck, and the shoulder. And then we're going to stack the pelvis, we're going to stack the knees, we're going to stack the ankles, and then the last motion is sit your butt into a chair. So sometimes it's fun to kind of reach your hand around, grab your own butt, and sit into that top butt. And then you notice that the two sides of the torso kind of even out in length, and on the bottom side, you feel a little bit of a waist form. Even if there's flesh that causes you not to be able to slide your hand under, you feel that there's kind of like a little bit of a lift where your waist would be. And then don't sit your butt into a chair and notice how you lose that waist. You become super light on the floor and your spine gets kind of like a sloop here and a bulge on the bottom side. And then sit your butt into a chair, don't sit your butt into a chair. Sit your butt into a chair, don't sit your butt into a chair. So essentially we're moving the hip flexor to the butt, like a pushing war, and then the butt to the hip flexor. And they take turns winning the pushing war. Butt wins, hip flexor wins. Butt wins, hip flexor wins. And we try and isolate that from the femur pose. So we try not to twist the pelvis as we do this. Good. And then once we've found those three motions, we're going to get that nice neutral pelvis. We're going to think about the hip flexors moving to the butt moving to the hip flexors. We're going to think about the inner line of the leg lifting off the blocks. We're going to think about the outer line of the leg squeezing the blocks. And then we're going to let the inner heel kind of win that pushing war to lift that. But we're not tight on that block. We're going to exhale to bring the foot down to neutral, and we're going to inhale to bring that foot up. So just a super gentle groin release. And sometimes I like to be a little bit of an invasive adjuster on myself. Coming in, reaching with my middle finger for that inner groin and pulling it back towards where my hamstring attaches, sort of in the middle of my butt. And again, you don't always have to nail it, but sometimes it's nice. So the groin is basically where a tight pair of underwear would be, where the elastic would be, and you want to roll it from where that groin is by your pubic bone to where that groin is by the middle of your back butt. Keeping that nice creeper foot so that the big toe heel edge of the foot is really active and that we're not sickling our foot. And then let's lift that top leg up and hold that top leg up. And our New Year's resolution this year as a yoga team was to learn to breathe into our back body and learn to roll these groins. And holy Hannah, you guys have done so great doing that. Well done. Gotta come up with something harder for next year. And so if you want to make it lighter, think inner line of the leg lifting off that block. Think about plugging in those joints and just get a little bit more if you need it, if you want it. No pain. Let's just go 5 more breaths here. So this internal rotation is where arthritis has a habit of creeping in first, right? It's also amazing for gentlemen to not get prostate cancer. That mobility in the groins is very, very helpful. And it helps to replace, to not have to get a hip replacement.
if we can, right? I always notice with people when they come to me, people that can't have their knees together and take their feet apart, it's, you know, it's not as easy to recover from that at 60 as it is from 40. And then bring your ankle down, remove the block, let that rest, take some breaths. Good. Then we're going to push ourselves up, we're going to come into tabletop position. We're going to tuck our toes under, and we're just going to do a little bit of toe kneading here, just to start to warm up our upper backs and our feet. So just like kitty, you know, drill hands as far forward as they need to be so you don't feel your wrists. We're going to push into the fingers, we're going to push into the palms. And then we're going to tuck our toes, we're going to get a good grip on the toes. And so we start with a 45-degree angle, right? And then we think inner heel dropping the block, outer heel squeezing the block, inner knee dropping the block, outer knee squeezing the block, and we're going to bring it back into a puppy with our weight on our feet. And this is where we kind of get an idea of what our angle is on our knees, right? And so we want to increase our angle from a 45, you know what I mean, to a 25, to a, you know, all of a sudden there's variable angle. But we don't want to have any pain. So it's really important that we kind of know our knee range, particularly as we do different variations of child's pose. And it's nice to be able to do a couple shoulder push-ups here. And I like to warm up for a child's pose for people that don't have a huge range in their knee with a tucked toe, because it really stretches out the ankles and releases the feet, which helps them to increase their range, right? Teaches us to have real active feet because we're better able to bend our knees if our feet are active. Just breathing here. Now, if your heels are on your butt, then you can start to walk your hands back. You could use blocks, right? Or you could just sit back on your heels.
Are knees together or apart?
Mine are apart right now. Yeah, just for now. And then we're just going to see wherever we are if we can imprint an arch. So I could imprint an arch here, right? And I'm really trying to move that lowest part of my back. I could even imprint an arch here, right? I want to honor my range in my knees. I don't want to rob myself and not go to where I can go to, but I want to go to where I can maintain it and not have pain in my knees or my feet, right? We got the rest of our lives, don't push it. Too much of a good thing is painful. And then find neutral, right? And then pull a femur in, pull a femur in, pull a femur in, pull a femur in. So here I can pull a femur in, right? Here I can pull a femur in. And just see how that affects your neck. I can do it here, right? And I can see that my knees move. I can't tell you how many people perpetually twist all day, every day in their pelvis.
I do.
Yeah, and then their shoulders are straight and they're just shortening like crazy. Right? And then find neutral and just feel neutral. And if you need to take a break, come forward, take a break. And then we're going to try sitting our butt into a chair. So if I was here, I could sit my butt into a chair. And you can see that I bulge on one side, shorten on the other. Bulge on one side, shorten on the other. Bulge on one side, shorten on the other. Here I can sit my butt into a chair. Sit my butt into a chair. And this is me just moving the weight. I'm not actually physically thinking about moving my ribs, but I'm really good at sitting in one butt, sitting in the other butt. Sitting in one butt, sitting in the other butt. And again, you can do it here. It's easier here and just honoring the range of your knees. We're going to be professional twerkers next year. How's that for a toe stretch, eh? And then find neutral, right? Shoulders back, heart center lifts. The beauty of a neutral spine is it's really functional, right? You can shoulder check. You can say yes, right? You can lift your arms up really easy, really freely, and movement just becomes a lot easier. All right, so let's come forward. We can either open up our legs individually just to release the backs of the knees, right? Just stretching out the ankles, or we can take it into a down dog if that's appropriate for us, if our shoulders feel warmed up enough. But we want to try and keep that neutral pelvis in our down dog. So as we find our habits, for example, I know that I tend to sit into my right butt. That means I'm continuously shortening on my left side. That habit isn't everything, right? And it doesn't feel like I'm doing it because it's such a habit. So I have to have a little mental mantra, left butt, left butt, left butt, left butt, and I learn to sit into my left butt. And then one day that's not going to be a bad habit anymore. Pre-kids, it was the right side, right? So these habits kind of change. But if I don't memorize the habit and if I don't try and change it, it's always going to be the same. It looks really, really good. Ooh. I'm going to grab somebody else's block. What I would think of eventually is keeping this lumbar curve is gorgeous. Thinking shoulders push into armpits, but armpits lift into shoulders. And then what I would do to start to go deeper is to straighten the legs. I would start to lift the hamstrings and slide the calves down. And plug those knees in. Inner line of the leg pulls apart. So instead of thinking I'm going to straighten my legs and moving like hamstrings straight back, think of hamstrings going up. Okay. And that's how it takes it out of the shoulders. Because you're going up and back as opposed to pushing yourself forward when you straighten.
Okay. Thank you.
No worries. And then here, maybe I could bend my knees and I could try imprinting and arching in my down dog. So Tanya, you can start to go really wide with your feet if you wanted to. And then just see if you can imprint and arch, imprint and arch, imprint and arch. Think of that action of rolling the groins, but keep your knees neutral. So again, there's a really strong habit of external rotation. And we could be doing this in our puppy, right? We could be doing this in tabletop. And then sit your butt into a chair, sit your butt into a chair, sit your butt into a chair. And just notice, again, you're probably going to have to bend your knees because by doing less, you're going to have more control, more ability to move your pelvis. If your legs are straight, it's a lot harder. It's like going 200 kilometers an hour versus 150, right? The bent knee puts the brakes on and you have a little more control. But eventually you become a really good driver and you can do it straight or bent. But I always think of a bent knee even though my leg is straight because that's the way the knee should be moving. And then sit your butt into a chair and then pull your femurs in. So to pull the femurs in, bend your knees, and what I like to do is pull one leg bone in, drop one heel down. So one foot's up, one foot's down. But I'm pulling the right femur in, right knee's bent, and that allows me to lift the pelvis. And then I level out my knees and my ankles. And so then my right heel would come down, my left knee is bent, and I pull the left femur into my left hip socket. It's a great groin release, but play with it gently. And then I drop my left heel, bend my right knee, lift my right femur. So it's again just learning how to do that. But you can do that tabletop. Right? You can move the femurs in tabletop. You can sit your butt into a chair in tabletop. And then from here, let's come into a child's pose. Let's have one block at medium height. We're going to take our knees nice and wide. We're going to have our toes touching. We're going to bring our seat back towards our feet. We're going to take our elbows nice and wide. We're going to have our forehead resting on the block, and we're going to have a nice neutral neck. Relaxing the shoulders. Then kind of letting the belly hang a little bit, and then moving the belly with your breath. So as you inhale, belly expands towards the floor, and as you exhale, belly pulls towards the spine. And again, you want to have the right range for your knees so your butt could be lifted, and then you can use your elbows to kind of move your butt back, but at the same time, that butt is always lifting up a little bit, keeping that nice boundary. Nice big belly breaths. Let's take 10 more big belly breaths here. match those breaths with a mantra if you like. And then when those 10 breaths are complete, hands underneath the shoulders, nice inhale to push ourselves back up into tabletop position. And again, just let the blood and oxygen flush the knees by opening up the backs of the knees. And then from here, let's stack 2 blocks, one on top of the other. And then we're going to sit on those blocks. If that is too low for you, you can always sit on your couch at home. I also have stools in the yoga studio, but I don't think we need them necessarily today. And so if you put that on that's going to be really wobbly. And this is a different pose than you're thinking of because my legs are forward. Normally you need 3 when the shins are back. So you want to kind of just come down and try and sit on that guy. But the feet are forward, and I have stools if you need higher. But that guy gets super wobbly. Yes, exactly like that. And use the wall if you need to. There you go. There you go, perfect. All right, so both sit bones are on the block. Let's try and find a 90-degree angle with our thighs. Let's have the soles of the feet on the floor, but see if you can start with a 90-degree angle between the calf and the back of the leg. Just again, if we give ourselves that space, it's easier to maneuver. Hands on the knees, lift the chest, shoulders back. If you find that you have to sit on the backs of the sit bones and you can't find the center of the sit bones, then move your legs further away from you. And then we're going to imprint and arch, imprint and arch, imprint and arch. And so you feel your sit bones like 2 little chopsticks, right? And they're on the block. And then you're going to the back of the chopsticks, the middle of the chopsticks, the front of the chopsticks, the middle, the back, the front. And then just notice, and it's interesting to watch it in my body because it's got a lot of mobility, you can see how much all I'm moving is my pelvis, and look what it does to my posture. And you can feel it in your body, I'm sure. So most of us sit on the backs of our sit bones. So sit on the backs of the sit bones. Right? What does that do? It causes you to turtleneck, right? Shoulder heads forward, especially if you're tall. It's bad for you, right? Try and move your neck. You can do it, but it feels gross, correct? And then find the center of the sit bones and move your neck. And think shoulder heads back, armpits lift up, lengthen your spine. Nice. All right, so now we found the center of our sit bones. Let's commit to the center of the sit bones, and let's pull one femur in, let's pull the other femur in. Pull one femur in, pull the other femur in. But stay on both sit bones, and you can see how much my femurs are moving. Go easy on those groins. If the groins are like it's too much, you can bring your knees a little closer, but we're going for 90 if we can. And so notice how just by moving my femurs, my shoulders twist. Notice how your shoulders twist. And then what often happens is we twist our pelvis, but then we compensate our shoulder. So try that. Pull your right femur in, then move your right shoulder forward, because we're sneaky and we like to hide our habits. We smoke outside behind the tree. My dad used to sneak cigarettes in the basement, and one time we set the fire alarm off.
Oh.
Woke everybody up. Right, and then do the other side. So pull the left femur in. Notice how the left shoulder goes back, and then be sneaky. You can still level out your shoulders, and that's good for teachers to know, right? Because we could fix this and cause more trouble, but if we fix the root, we could fix it, right? But if you're fixing this, which is the result, more problems. And then just go back and forth, and then find both femurs. Good. Shoulders back, heart center lifts. And then sit your butt into one chair. So just the right butt sits down. And you can even have your hands on your ribs. And then sit into your left butt. And then sit into your right butt. And then sit into your left butt. And then sit into your right butt. And the whole time, see if you can stay on the center of your sit bones. So you're still moving the femurs for me, Robin. So femurs are not going to move. You're going to stay right on the center of those sit bones, but you're going to just sit into the right butt. So you're going to take all your weight onto the right butt. Kind of like you're cha-chinging a typewriter. Cha-ching, you're moving to the right. Cha-ching, you're gonna move to the left and feel how the weight goes into the other butt, into one butt, into the other butt, into one butt, into the other butt. And so some things we're born with, you know, scoliosis, or some people are born with different shaped pelvises, right? So we accept that, but we strengthen it, because if you don't strengthen that scoliosis, it's gonna hurt, right? So you have to strengthen all the different movements so that that habit can be supported, even though it's a somewhat permanent habit. I could definitely see scoliosis straighten a bit, but some scoliosis, you know, it changes, but it doesn't ever heal necessarily. And some of it's just work related or car accident related or whatever, and it's 100% healable. All right, find both sit bones even, dig both heels in, pull both heels towards your butt, lift up the soles of the feet, grab onto your knees, lift your elbows. See if you can get rid of all the wrinkles in your wrists, keep lifting the elbows, keep pulling the elbows apart, hip flexors root, lift those armpits. Now here, some of us habitually go in the backs of the sit bones, and some of us who are really bending the pelvis come onto the fronts of the sit bones don't. Stay on the center of the sit bones. Samana Vayu, pull the lower abdomen in and up. Feel like your front body is lifting off the floor, even though you're coming down towards the floor. Don't let the knees come in, don't let the knees come out. And see if you can lengthen away from the hip flexors. See if you can keep the two sides of the torso even. See if you can find that helium in the back of the skull. And then just breathe. Nice deep, full breaths. See how active those elbows are? Super, yes, much better. And we're pulling it, it's not too much. You should be able to shake your head from now. So you gotta find just right. And just right is usually often without wrinkles in the wrist. If my elbows are too high, I've got wrinkles in the front of my wrist. Elbows are too low, I've got wrinkles in the backs of my wrist. Elbows too close, thumbs, elbows too far apart, pinkies. So feel your wrist, find your wrist level, and the elbows will even out. Right? Wrinkles are blocks in energy. It's not like you never want a wrinkle, but we just want to unblock that energy. So just keep coming down. Maybe at some point your hands can come to the floor. Again, inner knees dropping the block, outer knees squeezing the block so we don't let the knees move in or out. And then eventually we could let the spine curl and we could let our head hang. And then breathe into your back body. Nice deep, full breaths. So low back release, amazing, third trimester magic, right? And Tanya, I found on the bolsters, right, like for long, long holds and just letting that belly hang and getting that baby to slip around a little bit. We'll do some side stretches too. So from here, let's think about the length on the two sides of the armpit from hip flexor. So the two sides of the torso, that sit your butt into a chair, you know, to keep the two sides even. And we're just gonna walk the hands towards the right. So we're just gonna take the hands, they could be here, and we're just gonna walk them towards the right until eventually the arm is kind of rooting into the leg and the leg is rooting into the arm. Nice. And then slide your hands back to you so you can find a nice straight back. Right, so we're no longer hunching, but we've returned to a nice straight back. So everybody's gonna have to bring their hands closer to them. If you can't get it, just come onto your elbow and find it. Right, but we all know what a straight back feels like. Now leg pushes into arm pushes into leg. Left hand's gonna come to the back of the skull. Hand is gonna tap the back of the skull down. Head is gonna lift up into the hand. Reach into both elbows. And then keeping the two sides even, we're gonna lift that left elbow up, just to where it's comfortable. Nice neutral neck. We tend to wanna lift that left temple, so we're gonna root the right temple down. Head pushes into hand. We reach with that elbow. So this is where we're gonna bulge on the left side. So we wanna root to that left hip flexor, and we wanna lengthen hip flexor and armpit away from one another, and we wanna cha-ching the ribs to the left. So everybody could cha-ching a little bit here. And then we're gonna bring the elbow down as we exhale, and then we're gonna bring the elbow up as we inhale. We're gonna exhale to bring the elbow down, and then we're gonna inhale to bring the elbow up. The whole time my head is pushing into my hand is pushing into my head, my knees aren't moving, and my sit bones are rooted. So keep. You see how your chin is right down on your sternum? Neutral neck first. So lift up the chin so it's not on the sternum, right? And then you could start by moving the elbow. Better. Yeah. And then you can start to move the shoulder if that was appropriate. And this could grow. It could like come all the way down and all the way up. But I want to think about not bulging on that top side. And I'm lifting that elbow. And then eventually we're going to open it up to stay open. And I'm going to reach that elbow away from the armpit, but also away from the hip. Nice. And then if I wanted to, I could straighten out that arm without moving my elbow. Because this is pretty much a shoulder's distance, and if we straightened our arm, we'd still have that gorgeous ability to move our neck. And then lengthen your wrist away from your hip flexor. So again, good for everybody. It's a really nice low back release, but so good for third trimester. It's really opening up your side ribs so you can breathe into that space. So with each inhale, feel that space expand. With each exhale, feel it contract. You could bring your hand down if you wanted to. You could have your elbow on your knee. So that's a good option for you too, Keith, like this. This is a great option. Good, hey? Nice, and then let that elbow come down, let that hand come down. Big inhale to lift and lengthen. Again, you could do less elbows on knees, or you could walk your fingers forward, let your head hang, and then just feel the two sides of the torso. Are you still on the center of the sit bones? And just let that head be like a heavy bowling ball here. Let it release the upper back. And again, breathe into those back ribs. The entire back body expands on the inhale. The entire back body contracts on the exhale. And then we're going to bring the arms back to us a little bit, and we're going to walk to that left side without the legs moving. And we have to lengthen on the left side by tug-of-warring the hip flexor away from the armpit and cha-chinging the right ribs to the left side. And then leg pushes into arm, arm pushes into leg. To get a straight spine, most of us have to drag the hands back to us so we can easily shake our head for no. Right, so if we're hunching at all, twisting is difficult, so we bring those arms closer so we can pull the arm bones in and straighten out our upper back. Great. And then we're just going to bring the hand to the back of the skull. We're going to lift the head into the hand. We're going to reach with the elbow. And then maybe we just move the elbow. Maybe that's enough. It's a wonderful option to have that left elbow on the left knee, right? It gives you a heck of a lot more space. And then eventually you can start to move the shoulder. Right? Elbow on knee or not. And then again, so just lifting the head up. Neck doesn't have to change, right? The neck is just moving because the shoulder is moving. I'm not actually moving my neck. And that leg onto arm, arm onto leg really helps you to open that twist. And eventually you can start to grow. You can start to go a little bit deeper. And again, really watching that bulging on the right side and shortening on the left, because that's the nemesis to twisting.
So I'm cha-chinging to my bottom hand, to this hand here.
Here. So this to me is unaligned. So the visual that gets, you know, you cha-ching?
Yeah.
Cha-ching. Cha-ching. So on this pose, we tend to bulge on this side and shorten on this side. So I've got to lengthen on the bottom side, and you see how that cha-chings my ribs. And then I visualize a hand here, pushing my ribs and lengthening on this side.
Okay.
And you get this really sweet low back release.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we're going to open it and we're going to hold it open. Head pushes into hand, hand pushes into head, root into the back of the skull. That's super important here. Maybe you go back further. Nice. Maybe you straighten out just the forearm. Beautiful. Nice relaxed neck. If we can't shake our head for no, then we should have our elbow on our leg. It's only holistic if you can say no. Think of a big ball between your knees. Outer knees squeezing the ball, inner knees dropping the ball. And just breathe into that right side. Back body, side body, front body. You can just put your hand back on your head if you prefer. Nice. Let's go 5 more breaths on this side. And then hand on the head, elbow and gaze down, hands on the floor, come back to center. Big inhale to lift and lengthen, and then you might want to sink into it one more time. Just breathing here. Again, still on the center of the heels. If you need to put the feet down, go for it. But again, if you can stay on the center of the heels, do. And then bring your hands back to you. Walk those knees to one another. So Tammy, you'd be a little bit wider with the legs. The rest of us, let's do knees and feet at hips distance apart. Grab onto those knees. Nice big inhale to lift and lengthen. Let's drape ourselves over those legs. Lift the elbows. See if you can lift the heels just a little bit. So the big toe mounds to baby toe mounds down, toes down, but you're going to lift your heels just a little bit. And then we're going to see if we can take the right arm underneath and the left arm underneath. Maybe we can grab the elbows. Maybe we can't. We grab what we can, but the right arm's on top. And then again, just lift up into the back of the skull a little bit. Pull the arm bones into you. Keep those heels lifted. And if you want to let your head go, do. If you want to lift up the back of the skull, do. With each inhale, feel the whole body expanding, and with each exhale, feel the whole body gently contracting. Lift those heels just a little bit. Yeah, and feet are a little closer. So feet closer to one another, if you can. Heels. And then swap the crossing of the arms. And I like the arms here because I can think about the inner knees dropping the ball, and I can think about internally rotating the groins by using my arms sort of as that spacing. Dwayne, take your feet at hips distance apart, so as wide as your knees. Good. Now think of your inner knees, inner heels dropping the ball. So your inner line of the leg is pulling away from the other inner line of the leg. Nice. Nice, and then bring those feet down, hands on the knees, nice inhale to come up. And then we're gonna have our knees and our feet together, unless we're Tanya, we're gonna walk the feet back to us. And this is where we can start to work from like a 45 or a 90-degree angle to less of an angle between the knees, right? Some of us have to have our calves farther away from our hamstrings. And so this is a great place to work that flexibility. Hands on the knees. So again, this is a great way. It's a squat, but it's also prep for a child's pose. You could lift your heels up, right? You could have your heels down. You could let your head hang. You could have your arms on your legs and rest your forehead to get a lengthening through the back of the neck. But I like the height if I'm trying to increase the amount I can bend my knee, because on the floor, if I'm doing it, it's really hard to find the center of the sit bones. And without the center of the sit bones, this isn't going to change as quickly. We're not going to get as big of a result. So if you have someone that can't do a proper child's pose, these are great variations to get the same benefits, but really start to work the bend in the knee without pain and without gravity being a jerk. Because the weight of the body here is in the butt, not the knees. Let's just go 10 more breaths here. It's also a lovely low back release. So this would be such good homework for you. And if you don't have two blocks, honestly, you know those white plastic stools I have? They are so good. You know? Perfect. Done. And if you did this every day for 5 minutes, your low back would love it, and you'd see this angle decreasing quite quickly. Even if you just did it 3 days a week, right? You could do your Queen of the Mountain and then this. Because everyone's doing that every day. And then relax, and we're gonna come onto the floor. So again, a couple different ways to come onto the floor, but you don't wanna stack the wrist, you wanna make sure your fingers, you wanna make sure the wrist is at your ankle. Sometimes using your feet, lifting up and coming down is nice. Always mindful of the angle of the knees, come into tabletop, and then from tabletop, let's come into standing. So thighs back, knees and feet at hips distance apart, hands as wide as your mat, lift your belly, lift your ribs, relax your shoulders. We're gonna walk our hands to our knees, we're gonna lift with our knees, we're gonna walk our hands to our feet. We take our butt and our knees back, we take our hands to our knees, and we come up. Nice solid back. So the next one I wanna do, which is great, hip release, so good for the groins, right, is finding the right height for you. So some of us, balance is a little bit trickier, so we might use, I think using a wall is a good option today. We might use a wall and put our foot on the block. We might use a wall and put our foot on 2 blocks, right? So we would have our body back, we put our foot on a block. We all know how to straighten the shin by moving the femur. But because the weight's back, it's not such an issue. And then what we're gonna try and do is level the hips with the foot high, okay? So 2 blocks, 1 block, windowsill. My favorite thing when I was pregnant is I have bar stools, and I would stand with my foot on a bar stool for that 3rd trimester forever and sit my butt into a chair. A nice variation if you're not pregnant is foot on the wall, right? So it's basically a lunge with your foot elevated and your bottom foot is on the floor. So grab whatever blocks you want, hands on the wall. You kind of just lift up your foot and you find a height that works. And then you're going to pull the femurs in and out to feel how the pelvis moves. You're going to sit your butt into a chair. You're going to imprint an arch. You're going to get your shin level. You're going to lean into your hands. You can always move your foot back if you wanted to. And then you're just going to breathe into it. But we know that we want to have our shin level, so we don't want to have our ankle not in alignment with our knees. So what is that? That's a 90-degree angle from the calf to the hamstring. So you want to watch that angle. So we work to 45, but here we want to have more of like a 90. We want more space here. We don't want it to be like this. So you either move the femur back. Yeah, exactly. Now pull your right femur back. Yeah, so you see how that changes the angle? Good. And then just level that pelvis. Yeah, interesting, hey?
Feels so dramatic.
I know, and then this is gonna push into my finger. Just this. Just right here. Nice. And then just breathe into that. Pull those femurs in, move those hip flexors to the butt. Little mini bend, even in the standing leg. Nice deep, full breaths. And then big, big belly breaths. Let that breath move deep into the hips, into the tailbone. Let's go 10 more breaths on this side. That's gorgeous on you, Keith. Push into the back of the skull just a little bit. So it's right here, root back. As long as it doesn't hurt the neck, root back, root back. There you go. And then when those 10 breaths are complete, there's no rush. You're going to lift up the back of the leg, and you're going to bring the foot down. Take a little rest, standing, find your breath. And then find the right height on the other side. So again, left foot could come up, hands on the wall, and then you start just by moving your fingers, noticing what that does to your shin. See if you can find your sit your butt into a chair. See if you can find your imprint arch. And then find your neutral pelvis. And neutral just teaches us to get out of our habits. Hands on the wall. If you want to go deeper, you can always move that back foot back, or you keep this shin at a 90. You try and keep a 45 between the lower leg bone and the upper leg bone. And gently root into the back of the skull so that the neck is neutral. And breathe into it. Keep sitting your butt into a chair. Nice, and then just right here, fill this space. So take your femurs out. Not your femurs bones out, your arm bones. Yeah, exactly. So you're gonna pull the arm bones out. Perfect, right there. You feel how we got rid of this angel wing and belly? Perfection. And so sometimes I visualize I've got a strap around that hip flexor of the bed leg, and that strap is underneath the sole of the right foot, and the right foot is pulling that hip flexor down. And for those of us that run or play hockey, so good, right? You can always find something, you kind of look, you can find a bench at the hockey rink. See, this is a nice hockey version. And just breathe into it, be moderate with it, looking for the right level of stretch. Let's take 10 more belly breaths. Neutral spine. Notice that we want to shorten on the side where the leg is lifted, and we want to bulge on the side where the leg is long. Just getting to know those habits. When those 10 breaths are complete, no rush. Really think about lifting. You can start by lifting the heel, lifting the back of the leg and the calf, so you don't have to disturb the back to release. And find a mountain pose, find your breath. And then from here, we're going to come down onto the floor. So options are we could go through a squat. You're super warmed up to come down through a squat, right? You could do a straight knee squat, right? But feet are tracking knees. Otherwise, my new favorite thing is to take my knees back, my butt back, bring my hands to the floor, and like a bear, come down with a super solid back. Super, super light. Right? And then I can control the angle of my shin and my femur and safely come into it, right? So if I didn't want to do a 45 less than, I'd be mindful coming through. Bring it around. Knees together, feet together, hands behind the thighs, coming down one disc, one vertebra at a time. So Tanya, if you wanted to be on your side for this one, you can do a half happy baby on your side too with a shin lift. Right? If you're like, because you've just done so much and you may just not want to be on your back. Right, those of us that are on our backs, we're going to do the same thing with our thumbs. We're going to take our hands into the backs and knees. We're going to take those knees nice and wide. We're going to try and get our elbows on the floor. We're going to try to get rid of the wrinkles in our wrists. And then see if you can get your leg bones to a 45-degree angle. Sorry, 90-degree angle, 245s. So that the shins are straight. And then with the hands on the hamstrings, just straighten and bend without the thighs moving. So think of a shin lift. My thighs are not moving up and down. They're staying exactly where they are. So maybe my range in my hip flexors is less, so my thighs are away from me. But the trick here is that my thighs are not moving. And I could do this on my side. See, Tanya, I think you're in the loo. And I could do it on, this is so nice for that last trimester to do on your side. Right, so I basically am just doing a happy baby shin lift without moving my thighs. And you can even let that pelvis open, Tanya. Don't worry about a level pelvis as much at this stage. And then do the other side. The rest of us are still just doing these nice shin lifts. It's so lovely. We're thinking of the action of rolling our groins to keep our knees neutral. And then you can stop with them bent, or you can stop with them straight, whatever feels relaxing for you. Let's take 5 more breaths here. And then eventually let one foot come down onto the floor, other foot down onto the floor. Coming into Shavasana, if you want to be gentle on your knees and your back, you can have a bolster behind your thighs as you straighten one leg and then the other leg. I'm going to ditch the light, but we're still here. It's candle season, I've got to get the candles out. And just becoming as still as you can be. Focus on your body from the inside, feeling the space within your skin. and slowly, gently starting to wake up your body from the inside by deepening your breath. Wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes. Nice big inhale to stretch your arms. Exhale to let your arms fall down heavy as we start to bend our knees, walking our feet towards our seat. And then with an exhale, let's everybody roll off to one side. Nice inhale and arm strength to push ourselves up. Let's end with a nice humming om before we dedicate the minute of our practice. Maybe use this class to be mindful of the Zen proverb, let go or be dragged. Thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your practice. Namaste.